And now with our lesson, Clayton Tune.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
It is great to be back here. If you can't hear me in the back, just raise your hand and I'll go louder. It's weird not having a microphone. So, it's always a joy for me to get to preach. So whenever I get the chance to come to either my church or somebody else's church and preach, I always really enjoy doing it. So thank you for having me out here. What time is it right now? Oh, we'll watch. 10:30. Okay. All right. I want to take you back to 1978. 1978 is not a year that rings in a lot of our minds as memorable. It was not, the year that 9/11 happened, and it's not Y2K. So, 1978. Anybody not alive in 1978? Most everybody in here was. I was not. Okay. Let me just list off a few things that you might remember. If you're into movies, this is when Grease and The Deer Hunter came out. The Deer Hunter won the Academy Award that year. If you're into music, Rolling Stones were huge that year. Bee Gees were also pretty big. Or if you watch TV, shows like Happy Days, Chips, Little House on the Prairie, these were pretty much the most popular TV shows at that time. Anybody recall who was president in 1978? Carter. Okay. The first cell phone was also made this year. Hard to believe that it has almost reached the 40-year mark. We've had cell phones for that long. Something else happened in 1978. On a very desolate highway in Ohio, a 19-year-old boy by the name of Stephen Hicks decided he wanted to change his life, and he decided to hitchhike to pretty much anywhere. Now, this is back when hitchhiking was okay, and it wasn't as dangerous as it is today. So Stephen decides to make his way down the highway, has his thumb sticking out, and he's there for a long time, until it begins to get dark. And finally, he sees the headlights or the taillights of a car glow red, and a car pulls over. And excited, he runs to the car. Gets in, the driver's very cordial. Hi, how are you? I'm good. What's your name? My name's Stephen. Where are you headed? I don't care. Anywhere. I'm trying to get a whole new life going. So he gets in the car. Driver's very nice. He says his name is Jeff. They have a good introduction, and conversation flows pretty well. Well, Stephen has no clue where he's going, and he asks Jeff where he's going. Jeff just says, I'm getting off work. And Jeff is 18, by the way. I'm getting off work. My dad's out of town, so I'm just going to go back to my house and hang out. I've got beer, though, if you're down. So they go back to Jeff's house. Stephen, being 19, trying to change his life. What better option could you ask for than alcohol? Stephen would highly regret getting in that car that night. They get back to Jeff's house, and both guys are very nice. You have two young boys. You can discuss anything. You can discuss girls. You can discuss work. You can discuss politics, whatever. Especially with drinking, conversation really flows. And after about an hour, Stephen gets really uncomfortable with his host. Not uncomfortable to the sense of he feels physically in danger. Just something's not right. And after 2 hours, he's ready to go. And he makes the attempt to leave, but by this point, Jeff's already in a different state of mind. Stephen's not going anywhere. Finally, the confrontation gets heightened a little bit and turns physical. And in probably a fit of rage and a little bit of confusion, Jeff just grabs a 10-pound dumbbell and hits Stephen in the head and crushes his skull. Kills him instantly. He buried Stephen in the backyard. And for 9 years after that, Jeff Dahmer would lay dormant. He wouldn't kill anybody for 9 years. And then in 1987, from the run of 1987 to 1991, Jeffrey Dahmer would kill 16 people. He would be arrested in 1992, January. Charges like rape, necrophilia, dismemberment, and cannibalism would be among the charges that he faced. The trial lasted 2 weeks, and he was given 15 life sentences, totaling 951 years of imprisonment. Jeffrey's actions would become one of the most terrifying and sadistic acts in our history. He got what was coming to him, at least according to society. During a janitorial work operation, he was beaten severely, and he died shortly after that. How far can somebody go before you can't forgive them anymore. There's no need to go into detail regarding what Dahmer did. A lot of us recall that. Y'all recall the news feeds. Or if you don't recall it, you can go on YouTube and watch the whole thing. He's got interviews with Stone Phillips. He's got interviews on the news. It was a very frightening time if you were around at that point. Society will never forgive Dahmer for what he did. And you can get a good sense of that when you go on YouTube or go on Google and read the article. The best parts of these articles are the comments that follow them. Some of the comments are just sick. Society will never forgive somebody who did something like that. In our minds, Jeffrey Dahmer was a monster. But I want to know, is there ever a point, or is there ever a sin that you can commit that you're not going to come back? Because in society's minds, a sinful life could pretty much be decided as the severity of your sins. But is that really the case? Can you really be forgiven? And if you can be forgiven, does life really go back to normal? So I want to talk about a guy in the text who can maybe help us answer this question. I want to bring you back to the books of the kingdoms. We're going to start, and I'm just going to give you a quick run through. Who was the first king of Israel? First Saul. Okay, who was after Saul? David. David's son was Solomon. Okay, so once Solomon starts, what happens after Solomon is king to Israel? It splits. Okay, so we got Solomon's son takes David's inheritance, and then Solomon's enemy, Jeroboam, takes the rebels. And you have this massive split that goes on. Rehoboam is Solomon's son, and he maintains David's part, which is later called Judah, and then Jeroboam maintains the part that's called Israel. That's the much larger half. Starting in 1 Kings chapter 12, you begin this long series of showing you each king of both Israel and Judah. And every single king is pretty much based on the same thing, the law. That's all the writer seeks to tell you. This person was king of Israel. He either followed the law or he didn't. And if he didn't follow the law, he didn't last very long. But if he did follow the law, he had a pretty good run. And that's pretty much the basis of kings, is all regarding this law that God has set apart, and whether either the king of Judah or Israel followed it. Jeroboam is the first northern king, and he creates sins for the people that eventually cause their downfall. I know that because the writer says it 17 times throughout the entire book of Kings. 17 times. Jeroboam is the one person who caused Israel's downfall because of his sins. Now, as you go through the southern half, you get a sense that they're kind of heading the same way. And then you get to a guy by the name of Hezekiah. And you get this sense that finally we got some hope coming to us. Now, Hezekiah has some ups and downs, and he is given more space in the book of Kings than any other person who did right in God's eyes. The only other person to match Hezekiah is Ahab. So you get this good run with Hezekiah in 2 Kings. And then after Hezekiah, do you know who you get? It's a guy by the name of Manasseh. And if you're in Israel at this time and you're reading this account, and you see that name, you get the same feeling that you hear when you hear Jeffrey Dahmer. This is not a good part of our history. Turn to 1 Kings chapter 22. I'm going to read you verses 1 through 6. Manasseh was 12 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem for 55 years. His mother's name was Hephzibah, and he did evil in God's eyes, following the detestable practices of the nations that God had driven out before Israel. He rebuilt the high places that his father Hezekiah had destroyed. He also erected altars to Baal and made an Asherah pole, as Ahab, king of Israel, had done. He bowed down to many starry hosts, and he worshipped them. He built altars in the temple of God, to which the Lord had said, "In Jerusalem I will put my name." In both courts of the temple of God he built altars to all the starry hosts, and he sacrificed his own son in the fire, practiced sorcery and divination, and consulted mediums and spiritists. He did much evil in God's eyes, provoking God to anger. 12 years old, and he would run for 55 years. He is the longest reigning king in either Israel or Judah. I'm surprised that being the longest running king, that's all you give me. You only fill up a fourth of my Bible with all of that. Manasseh does not have a very good run in God's eyes. The writer connects him back to Ahab, which, again, if you're around at that time and you see Ahab, it's one of the same things. This was not a good king for us. Connects him back to Ahab and the fact that he created these Asherah poles, and worst of all, Manasseh bows down to a different god. But that's just the beginning. The writer goes on to say how terrible Manasseh really was. He not only builds altars and statues to other gods, he not only bows down to them, but he consults mediums. He seeks out spiritists to figure out how to run his kingdom. Y'all know who else did that? Saul. Towards the end of Saul's life, God wasn't talking to him. And no matter what he did, he could not get God to say a word. So in distress, Saul finds a witch that he had previously kicked out. And he seeks God that way. And he gets more than he bargained for, at least according to the book of Chronicles. Josephus tells you in regards to Manasseh that he exerted every kind of wickedness in his conduct and left no impious act undone. He polluted the temple. He killed all the righteous men among the Hebrews. He spared no prophets, some of whom he killed every single day, so that Jerusalem ran with blood. Killing the innocent, murdering your own child, killing your own people. The United States of America would never allow a leader like that to run our country. We don't even allow it if leaders like that run other countries. We go take them out. That is unacceptable. And here you have somebody who is leading not only their life like this, but they're causing Jerusalem to go the exact same way. Verse 16 tells you that Manasseh shed so much innocent blood that he filled Jerusalem from one end to the other. No other king gets that description in either Chronicles or Kings. The writer of Kings, however, doesn't seem very interested so much in Manasseh's actions as he is in God's reaction to what's going on with him. Go to 2 Kings 21. 2 Kings 21. Did I say 1 Kings a while ago? Or 2 Kings? I'm sorry. I was well off. I said that and I thought, why am I having you guys go to 1 Kings? I'm sorry. Stay in 2 Kings. Nothing's going on in 1 Kings. 2 Kings 21. Go to verse 10. The Lord said through his servants, the prophets, Manasseh, king of Judah, has committed these detestable sins. He has done more evil than the Amorites who preceded him, and he's led Judah into sin with his idols. Therefore, this is what the Lord God of Israel says. I'm going to bring such disaster on Jerusalem and Judah that the ears of everyone who hears it will tingle. I will stretch out over Jerusalem the measuring line used against Samaria and the plumb line I used against Ahab. I will wipe out Jerusalem as one wipes a dish, wiping it and turning it upside down. I will forsake the remnant of my inheritance and hand them over to their enemies. They will be looted and plundered by all their foes because they have done evil in my eyes, and they provoke me to anger from the day of their forefathers coming out of Egypt. The writer frames this in such a detestable way for these people. God is at the point to where almost there's no coming back for these people. He talks about this line of, I will do something that will cause the ears of everybody who hears it to tingle. Does that line sound familiar to anybody? I don't expect that it would. It only occurs 3 times. But every single time it occurs, God is about to do something horrific. It occurs one time in Samuel at the very beginning, talking about Eli and his sons. Y'all know who Eli was, right? Priest. Eli's sons were awful. And they would not listen to anything God had to say. And Eli couldn't get his act together. And God says, because of this, because you couldn't control your sons, I'm going to cause something that will cause the ears of anybody who hears it to tingle. And he causes the Philistines to come in and take all of what the Israelites had. They even take the ark. News so horrific that when Eli hears the news, he pretty much passes out and breaks his neck, falling out of his chair. So now that you're reading this again, this is not going to be good for Judah. They've already seen Israel go down in flames. In God's eyes, they're next. You even had this language, I'm going to take them and I'm going to wipe them off of a plate. But not just that, I'm going to turn the plate over. And I'm going to tap the top of it to get whatever remnant is left on that plate off. Good riddance. That's how bad you people are. If this was all you had, if you only had kings, which at that time, coming out of captivity, They don't have Chronicles. So this is all you have. Manasseh doesn't get a very good review. This is the worst person possible. Even if you're going into in 24 verse 3, go to 24. Surely these things happened to Judah according to the Lord's command in order to remove them from his presence because of Manasseh's sins and all he'd done, including the shedding of innocent blood. For he filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, and the Lord was not willing to forgive. So if this is all you got, then the answer to that question before is no. Actually is yes. You can go a certain length that God's not going to forgive you, in the writer of Kings' eyes. But let's switch. Go to Chronicles 33. 2 Chronicles 33. 2 Chronicles 33. Okay. If you're not familiar with how Chronicles runs, it's going to take you from the very beginning with Adam and Eve. It's going to give you a lot of names, a lot of dates, a lot of people. And it's going to take you all the way up until the destruction of Jerusalem and just a little bit after that. So you really get the entire history of Israel in the book of Chronicles. Luckily, he gives you a look at Manasseh. Now, for the first 10 verses, you get really the same picture of Manasseh. Evil guy, kills his own son in the fire, worships other gods. And then in verse 10, he decides to make a little switch. 33 verse 10. The Lord spoke to Manasseh and his people, but they didn't pay any attention to him. So God brought against Manasseh, the army commander of the king of Assyria, who took Manasseh prisoner with a hook in his nose, bound him with bronze shackles, and took him to Babylon. In his distress, he sought the favor of God, and he humbled himself greatly before the God of his fathers. When he prayed to him, the Lord was moved by his entreaty and listened to his plea. So he brought him back to Jerusalem, back to his kingdom. And then Manasseh knew that the Lord is God. That's a pretty vital piece of the puzzle, wouldn't you think? Why would you leave that out? If you ever look up this story, if for some reason you enjoy reading commentaries just in your spare time, you'll find that a lot of commentators think that the writer of Chronicles made it up. I mean, it's a pretty huge turn. Or maybe he got the wrong information. Possibly you could go this route. You could say that the writer of Kings didn't have all the information. But look at it like this. The writer of Kings and Chronicles have two different points they're trying to make. You're right. Hearing about somebody like Manasseh's conversion is a huge deal. But what if to the writer of Kings it does nothing to advance your point? The writer of Kings is only out to tell you, here's the king, here's what he did, and here's what happened to Judah. Regardless of whether or not Manasseh got converted and changed his life and got saved, regardless of that, Judah still fell. And regardless of his conversion, Judah fell because of Manasseh. The repentance of Manasseh has an effect on a deeper level, though. Or at least it should have an effect on us, because this serves as an example that no depth of immorality can be so far down that you cannot come back. Not only did his words move God to set him free, but the writer tells you that afterward, he gets to work to rebuild what he messed up. It says that he rebuilt the outer wall of the city of David. He fortified Judah with protection. He built up the army. He made sacrifices to God. He got rid of all the foreign gods that he put in that temple. He put this symbol in the temple. It's kind of like a sign. I guess the best thing to equate that to today, you see them driving. I can't think of it. It's like the Islam symbol, Christianity symbol, the Jewish symbol. It's all in one. It's an all-encompassing. And that's a very popular message today, this idea of we're all equal. And I get that. But the idea of it doesn't matter which way you get to a God, as long as you're going on a path, that kind of message. It would be like you got a preacher who preached that message to you. And he did it for so long that he put one of those symbols right in the front. That could be the equivalent of what he did. So he took that down. Tore down all the altars that he rebuilt. He is trying to get his act together. Doing all of this moves God to bring him out of captivity and put him back in his kingdom. I don't know when this happened in Manasseh's life, but the fact that he ruled for 55 years, I imagine this had a lot to do with how long he he reigned in Jerusalem. Manasseh's conversion speaks not only to a continuation of prosperity for Judah, but it speaks a lot to God's grace in a situation like this. Here you have a king who commits murder. Not just murder. He commits a murder in his own family. He doesn't just worship a god. He decides to throw his own son in the fire for that god. He builds up different altars to other gods, going against the God that put him in power in the first place. And yet, despite all of this, when he goes into captivity, when he goes in the darkest point of his life, he submits himself to God and prays in such a way that God is moved by this. Here's a guy sins who the severity is past 100. And God finds it in himself to forgive him. The issue with characters in the Bible is that it's hard for us to really grasp how bad they were. I mean, we read that here's a guy who puts up idols in a temple and, commits murder for his own people, commits murder in his family. And we can read that and we just kind of gloss over it. Maybe you don't, I do. It's easy to do that. A lot of these stories are so violent and graphic. I mean, go through the book of Judges. These are some nasty stories. And we can read that and just sometimes it's our VBS story, for goodness sakes. These are adult stories. And we just gloss over them sometimes. Because it's hard for us to grasp that. Yet, when I talk about Jeffrey Dahmer and the fact that he cannibalized some people and crushed somebody's skull with a barbell, both of these guys' sins are disgusting. But hearing that today, that makes us uncomfortable. And I understand that because Dahmer's situation is current. What I find interesting is that there are hundreds of articles and books and TV interviews about Jeffrey Dahmer. And only a few of them tell you that in 1994, in an interview with Stone Phillips, Stone asked him, well, here you are, you're in prison, so now that you've had all this, you've had the trial, you're awaiting your 900 years of life sentence. What are you looking for now? You know what Dahmer's response was? Honestly, the only thing I'm looking for now is just some peace. I just want some peace in my life. Here is a man who has nowhere left to go. Society has pretty much thrown their hook in his nose and dragged him down to a desolate pit of prison. And 900 years to sit there is a long time. Well, after saying all this, a man by the name of Kurt Booth just went on a whim. And does anybody know Kurt or heard of Kurt before? Okay. Kurt sent Dahmer a Bible and a correspondence course just on a whim. Think about that today. I mean, sending a serial killer, rapist, and cannibalist a Bible. Good luck. But he sent him one. You know what? Dahmer filled it out. And he sent it back. Most correspondence courses come in sections. So, you send the first one back and you get one more. I can imagine Kurt's surprise seeing this from Dahmer. Here's the course. I filled it out. What's next? Okay. I'll send you one more. And they get a relationship going. They have correspondence together. And finally, the relationship gets so good that Dahmer decides he wants to get baptized. And so Kurt looks for a guy who could be close to Dahmer in location. He finds a guy by the name of Ray Ratcliffe. Now, what Kurt will tell you later on in interviews is that he had a hard time finding a preacher to baptize Dahmer. For reasons such as, if you think I'm going in that room with that man, you are out of your mind. Or reasons like, God ain't going to forgive him. What he did is, he ate one of his victims. God's not going to forgive that. He's already too far gone. These are actual responses when he looked for somebody to baptize Dahmer. So Ray actually did it. Does anybody know Ray by chance? Okay. So Ray goes and does it. And Dahmer decides to change his life, and this was a huge thing of controversy. I've talked about this recently to some people who were in the Christian background, and they still have that mindset of, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have baptized him. That's our attitude, really? So Ray baptizes him, Dahmer changes his life. He begins to have correspondence with Ray, and a fella gets wind of all this. And he sends Dahmer a letter, and he says, hey, congratulations on turning your life around. I want you to know our church is praying for you. I know that you're in a bad situation, but I'm praying for it. If there's anything I can do, let me know. Dahmer wrote him back and said, thank you, I appreciate it. I'm sending you $5 worth of stamps. I need you to send me 25 correspondence courses of whatever you gave me before, because I got some guys here who might need it. Here is a story that echoes, kind of, what Manasseh did. It's not just so much that Jeffrey Dahmer got himself right. He's got some work to do to fix some problems that he might have created. In the beginning, I asked two questions. I asked, is there a point that you can go to where forgiveness is out of the option? The writer of Kings seems to think so, because he talks about Judah went past the point of forgiveness with God. So what do you think? Can you be forgiven for anything? I mean, I would venture to say, yeah, you can. Hopefully I don't say this the wrong way. A life of sin is not necessarily defined by the severity of your sin. In cases like that, it doesn't really matter. Not to say that every sin is the same. I'm not saying that. But the severity does not matter. The way to turn back from a life of sin is simple. It's not simple, but it's just submitting to God. Here you have two people whose sins could not be any more severe, and yet all they had to do was just submit. Manasseh's sins were, and borrowing a phrase from one of John's books, John the Bible writer, Manasseh's sins were piled high to heaven. Here is a king that lives a life away from God, and yet in his darkest times finds it in himself to submit. And here is a God that has watched a man spit in his face for years, and he finds it in himself to forgive that king. Now, that's all well and good. Great, Manasseh got saved. But what about Judah? Jerusalem? David's remnant that was left. What about them? Did everything go back to normal for them? Go to 2 Kings 23. A lot of jumping around. 2 Kings 23. Verse 26. Nevertheless, God did not turn away from the heat of his fierce anger, which burned against Judah because of all that Manasseh had done to provoke him to anger. So the Lord said, I will remove Judah from my presence as I removed Israel, and I will reject Jerusalem, the city that I chose, and this temple, about which I said, there I shall put my name. Nevertheless, God did not turn away from the heat of his fierce anger, which burned against Judah, because of all that Manasseh had done to provoke him to anger. This is occurring in Kings during Josiah. Manasseh's dead. If he converted himself, why didn't anything change? Why didn't it change for Judah? Or did it matter for them? It happens again in chapter 24, verse 3. Like we looked at before, Manasseh is noted in the book of Kings as being the catalyst for Judah's fall. It's his fault. Was he forgiven? Absolutely, I think so. I would be willing to bet that he was forgiven. Did Israel change their life? Were they let off the hook? No. I wouldn't venture to say so. It's almost as if God says, okay, you're forgiven. But if you think for 1 second that the damage you did back there in Judah is out of my mind, you're nuts. You did a lot of damage out there. And you need to fix it. And Manasseh makes the attempt to fix it. So if you're Israel and you're coming out of captivity, a lot of people will maintain that Kings was given to Judah as they were coming out of captivity or while they were there to show them, here's how you got to where you were. You put your trust in kings that were going the wrong direction. Your king didn't follow the law, and you put your trust in that king. And here's where you are. Fix the problem before you come back. So if this is the book that you get, and you see that with Manasseh, what can you learn from his story? And knowing that, what can we take out of Manasseh's story? Two things, and I'm done. The first point is that God would like all people to change their life and get themselves out of this world and come to Him. God is on His own timetable. It is up to you to get your act together and follow Him. And it is up to us as God's people to help that. He wants people to come to Him. Oftentimes, though, in the meantime of us turning to God, it's not just us who gets affected by what we do. A lot of people are around us. And sometimes we're dragging a lot of people down. Who are you affecting in your life? Or better question, are you affecting anybody in your life? In either a good or a bad way? How are you affecting these people? Do not wait until society puts chains on your feet and drags you down to where you can't come back. Because some people, they don't come back. Don't be like Manasseh and have to sit in despair, pleading to God. Don't be like Dahmer, who had to look for peace, sitting in jail awaiting 900 years of a life sentence. Don't wait for it. It's already been given to us. But some of us have that peace. Some of us have submitted to God, and we feel that peace. And if that's the case, awesome. But if that's the case, we got some work to do. Perhaps there are past idols in our life that need to be torn down. Perhaps there are idols in our present life that we need to tear down. Perhaps there are walls we need to rebuild that we broke down for other people. Whatever it is we have to do, we have got to get to work on fixing the mistakes of our past, the idols of our present, to better help people to come to understand God, to put their trust in Him, and to live a life that is worthy in God's eyes. Let's all stand and sing.